The Armenian Dram is the official currency of Armenia. The word dram comes from the ancient Greek drachma, which was used in the region thousands of years ago. Today's Armenian Dram was introduced in 1993, following Armenia's independence from the Soviet Union. Understanding the history of this currency is understanding the economic journey of a nation that has faced significant challenges while building its modern identity. Before we discuss the modern dram, we need to understand that currency has a long history in Armenia. The ancient Greek drachma circulated in Armenia during the Hellenistic period after Alexander the Great's conquests. Later, during the Roman and Byzantine periods, Armenian territories used various coins from these empires. This historical connection to the drachma is why the modern currency carries the name dram, a direct link to Armenia's ancient past. In medieval Armenia, the kingdom minted its own coins. Armenian kings like Tigranes the Great issued coins that bore their image and Armenian inscriptions. These coins facilitated trade across the Silk Road and demonstrated Armenia's economic independence and power during the height of its medieval kingdoms. For most of the 20th century, Armenia was part of the Soviet Union. From 1922 until 1991, the Soviet ruble was the official currency throughout Soviet Armenia. The ruble was the only legal tender, and the Armenian economy was completely integrated into the Soviet economic system. During the Soviet era, Armenia developed significant industrial capacity. The Soviet government invested in factories, manufacturing plants, and infrastructure. Armenian currency was not independent, it was entirely controlled by Moscow. Exchange rates, monetary policy, and economic decisions were made in the Soviet capital, not in Armenia. By the late 1980s, as the Soviet Union began to collapse, economic problems became increasingly apparent. Inflation was rising, and the ruble was losing value. The Armenian economy, which had been tightly controlled and planned by Moscow, was not prepared for the transition to a market economy. Armenia declared independence on September 21, 1991. This was a momentous occasion for the Armenian people, but it created immediate economic problems. The country had to establish its own central bank, create its own currency, and build an independent economic system, all while facing severe challenges. The period from 1991 to 1993 was extremely difficult. Armenia was fighting the Nagorno-Karabakh War with Azerbaijan. The conflict disrupted the economy, destroyed infrastructure, and caused massive displacement of people. The Armenian Dram was initially introduced in 1993, but it was not the first attempt at an independent currency. Before the official Dram, Armenia briefly used a temporary currency called the coupon or dram coupon in 1992 and early 1993. This transitional currency helped Armenia move away from using the Russian ruble, but it was unstable and not accepted internationally. On March 22, 1993, the Armenian National Bank introduced the official dram as the sole legal currency of Armenia. The initial exchange rate was set at about 34 drams to $1. The symbol for the dram is, which is an Armenian letter. The introduction of a national currency was a crucial moment for Armenian sovereignty. It represented economic independence and Armenia's right to control its own monetary policy. However, the currency immediately faced severe challenges. The early years of the dram were marked by hyperinflation. Between 1993 and 1995, the Armenian economy experienced one of the worst inflation rates in the world. The dram rapidly lost its value against foreign currencies. By 1994, $1 was worth about 1,500 drams. By 1995, it had jumped to over 400 drams per dollar. Prices for basic goods increased almost daily. Salaries could not keep up with inflation, and people's savings became nearly worthless almost overnight. Several factors contributed to this hyperinflation. First, the ongoing war with Azerbaijan disrupted economic activity and destroyed infrastructure. Second, the country was cut off from the Russian market and needed to find new trading partners. Third, the government was spending more money than it received in taxes, forcing it to print more currency to pay its bills. This period was economically devastating for ordinary Armenians. Many people lost their savings. Those who had foreign currency or gold were much better off than those who held drams. The Armenian diaspora began sending money to relatives back home to help them survive this economic crisis. Recognizing the severity of the economic crisis, the Armenian government and the National Bank began implementing stabilization measures. In 1994, a new economic policy was introduced. The government committed to reducing inflation through fiscal discipline and monetary control. One key step was reducing government spending and preventing the central bank from printing money to cover budget deficits. International financial institutions, particularly the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, provided assistance and guidance for economic reform. These measures began to work. By 1997, inflation had decreased significantly. The dram began to stabilize against the US dollar and other foreign currencies. The exchange rate stabilized at around 500 drams per US dollar in the late 1990s. While this was still very weak compared to the initial 1993 rate, it represented stability, a huge improvement over the hyperinflation period. The early 2000s saw continued stabilization of the Armenian economy and the dram. Economic growth resumed, averaging around 7 to 10% annually during the 2000s. This was driven by remittances from Armenians living abroad, foreign direct investment, and recovery from the war. The exchange rate of the dram gradually strengthened. By 2005, one US dollar was worth about 450 drams. This appreciation reflected growing confidence in the Armenian economy and the currency. Armenia's main exports during this period included minerals, agricultural products, and diamonds. The country also developed a tourism sector. International trade helped bring foreign currency into the country, which supported the value of the dram. The Central Bank of Armenia maintained relatively conservative monetary policies. This helped prevent the kind of hyperinflation that had devastated the economy in the 1990s. The central bank focused on price stability and controlling inflation, which was crucial for economic growth. Today, the Armenian dram is the established currency of Armenia. The banknotes come in denominations of 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, and 100,000 drams. Coins are minted in denominations of 10, 20, 50, 100, and 200 drams. The design of Armenian currency features important figures from Armenian history and culture. Banknotes include images of famous Armenian writers, scientists, and historical figures. This reflects Armenia's pride in its cultural heritage and history. As of recent years, the exchange rate has been approximately 400 to 430 drams per US dollar. The currency has remained relatively stable. However, the dram is not freely convertible outside of Armenia, meaning that while you can exchange it for other currencies, it is not widely used internationally. The modern Armenian economy faces various challenges. The 2020 conflict with Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh disrupted the economy again and caused significant damage to infrastructure. However, the Armenian dram remained relatively stable during this conflict, indicating that monetary policy has become much more robust than in the 1990s. Today, Armenia is working to modernize its economy and reduce its dependence on remittances. The government is promoting sectors like information technology, tourism, and agriculture. A strong and stable currency is essential for these economic development goals. The Central Bank of Armenia continues to manage monetary policy independently, which is a significant achievement for a small country surrounded by larger regional powers. This independence allows Armenia to make economic decisions based on its own interests rather than external pressure. The history of the Armenian dram is a story of challenge, crisis, and eventual recovery. From its introduction in 1993 during a time of war and economic chaos, to the hyperinflation of the mid-1990s, to the eventual stabilization in the early 2000s, the dram has reflected Armenia's broader economic journey. The currency represents Armenian independence and sovereignty. Having its own currency means Armenia can control its own monetary policy and make independent economic decisions. This is symbolically and practically important for the nation. The dram story is not just about money and exchange rates. It is about a people working to build a modern nation-state while dealing with poverty, war, and economic hardship. The relative stability of the currency today, after the chaos of the 1990s, represents significant progress and the determination of the Armenian people to succeed. The Armenian dram continues to evolve. As Armenia develops economically and integrates further into regional and global markets, its currency will remain a reflection of the nation's economic health and prospects. For Armenians, the dram is more than just money, it is a symbol of independence that was hard-won and continues to be protected.